Hello, fellow educators. Welcome to the 26th episode of Teacher's Tent. Still a place to regain your strength after a long day, week, or maybe semester this 2023. I'm your host, Steve G, sharing this second season of our podcast. Our last episode's topic brought a lot of good conversation. One listener, a teacher in Garland ISD, Miss Heather, sent a message and kindly reminded me that the dyslexia training in Garland ISD is open for all educators. Thank you, Miss Heather, for sharing this news. And I hope that everybody found value in what was shared in episode 25. Today, we'll look into something that is probably the highest source of irritability in teachers: feeling like you're talking to a wall. Have you ever asked your kids to turn to page so and so in their books or assignments such and such in their iPads, only to have them asking you over and over and you answering over and over until you wonder, am I talking to a wall? We've all been there and done that. So, this episode is really for all of us. When I ask K through 12 teachers during my presentations, what is your biggest pet peeve? This topic usually ranks among the top three. No one likes talking and not being listened to. It is exhausting, not to mention the effect on our self esteem. We begin to wonder, is what I am saying worth anything if no one listens? The emotional toll of following this train of thought is huge. So let me say that today we'll look at the how you talk rather than the what you talk. I firmly believe that anything you say can come out as interesting if only you say it, following a few important tips. I guess what I'm trying to say is don't change your message. Instead, change how you deliver it by trying out these tips. Because of the complexity and length of the topic, we'll cover it in two episodes, with the first five tips shared in today's episode and five more coming up in episode 27 in 2 weeks' time. So, let's talk about how not to talk to a wall so that students do follow instructions. One of the joys of having grandkids is seeing your own children in a parenting role. My wife and I enjoy watching how our daughter and her husband are trying with our 2.5-year old grandson things that we used to do ourselves as parents. Sometimes we also witness them incorporating other methods of raising kids we never did or tried ourselves. Recently, we learned how they get their little one's attention. They call his name and then they say, "Listen." The expectation is that he drops what he's doing, looks at them, and holding both his ears, says back, "Listen." So far, they've always seen it work. So, I did what most teachers do. I stole their idea and decided to apply it in my own classroom. It worked. I tweaked it, of course, by saying, "Everyone listen." And my students now respond by saying, "Listen." I left out the years part. I didn't think that was going to work with big fifth graders. So, this is my number one tip. Before you give any instruction to your students, you need to make sure they're listening. Use whichever attention getter works for you, but do get their attention. A second step to ponder is what to do when someone is still not giving you her or his attention. Trust me, if your kids are anything like my students, there'll always be one or more who keeps talking after you finish applying step one. Because I want to be effective, I cut straight to the chase and kindly, but firmly ask, "Fulanito, do you have something to say? Because if you do, we'll all be quiet to hear it." When Fulanito or Fulanita, rather embarrassed, says no, I quickly add, "Okay then, because I do have something to say, therefore I need you to please listen." You set the expectation that when you speak, everyone listens. Once you have everyone's attention, it's a good time to throw out there your third statement. Everyone listen, otherwise, you'll have to do things twice. Again, the tone is clearly set. If you choose not to follow my instructions, you will have wasted your time, and you'll still have to do it all over again. In regards to this third step, I have often been asked if it isn't rather cruel to expect that from children. On the contrary, I believe it is a great way to develop accountability in students and letting them face the consequences of their own decisions, both of which help greatly to remove any rooted entitlement from their little lives. Without wasting any time, you go next into your fourth step. Explain one thing at a time. You do it using visual, kinesthetic, and auditory cues to reach all learning styles in your audience, as well as every language scaffold to help your ELs understand, if you have any. Model every step and keep it simple. The older students are, the more steps you might introduce, but I personally never go over three parts or jobs, as I want all to follow and remember. It is a good idea to encourage note taking too, if the steps are complex. Finally, in fifth place, allow students to access an exemplar while they're completing their work. According to Tana Esplin, an instructional designer at Utah Valley University, exemplars are key examples chosen so as to be typical of designated levels of quality of competence. They can be authentic student work from previous cohorts or teacher constructed examples based on the instructor's experience with issues and problems students commonly make. These exemplars can help students see what is expected with regard to the assignment. Using an exemplar while explaining or having one available for them to check when they think they have finished has allowed me to almost eradicate another highly annoying question I used to get in my room. Like this, maestro? I know children need validation. I get it. It is part of being a child. But I want them to grow up someday and be able to decide by themselves whether that work is all right or not. Many teachers love having students come to them and ask them every minute so that they can decide themselves what is right and what is not. I am clearly not one of them. This is one of the pillars of my student led classroom. For 13 weeks now, to the above annoying question of, like this, I have calmly answered, I don't know. Does your work look like the exemplar? I must say it is seldom now that I get that question anymore, but breaking that habit can be very hard. I am so proud that most of my students, by now, can decide by themselves whether the work they're doing is what they have been asked to do or not. In conclusion, many teachers are frustrated when they give instructions and their students don't follow them. But, hopefully, by keeping in mind the five suggestions we shared today, we can make sure every student in our classroom listens and complies with the instructions given. These fives were: use an attention getter, make sure that the last talker is listening to you, warn them that if they don't listen, they'll have to do it all over, explain one thing at a time, modeling, and finally, use an exemplar for the kids to see what the finished product should look like. If you want to share your story of ever feeling like talking to a wall or how things go once you apply these tips in your classroom, please just follow Teachers Tent on Instagram at Teachers Tent and leave your comment or experience. I would just love to get your feedback. In the meantime, please join us in 2 weeks' time for our podcast's 27th episode, Talking to a Wall: Why Students Don't Follow Instructions, Part 2. We'll continue to dive deep into this exasperating habit some students have and consider 5 more tips to avoid teacher burnout. So, please let me know in advance any ideas you might have on this topic. Please continue suggesting topics you'd like to hear about here, as well as sharing Teachers Tent in your schools. And remember, if you're enjoying the show, please don't forget to let your colleagues and friends know about and bring them to Teachers Tent. We'll make room for them too. Have a great day.